बैठेंगे और दोनों भी रिप्रेजेंटेटिव अपनी केसेस जो है वो यहाँ पर पेश करेंगे। उनके लिए एक टाइम लिमिटेशन है जिसके तहत उनको काम करना है और जिसके तहत उनको अपना प्रेजेंटेशन देना है, और उसी टाइम लिमिट को वो फॉलो करेंगे। जज साहब उन्हें करने को लगाएंगे एंड विद इन दैट टाइम दे हैव टू प्रेजेंट देयर केस। It will exactly be the copy how the proceedings actually go. टोटल समय यहाँ पर करीब 1.25 घंटे का है। पहले 20 मिनट अपेलेंट की तरफ से प्रपोजिशंस, फिर 20 मिनट रिस्पोंडेंट की तरफ से प्रपोजिशन, 10 मिनट काउंटर बाय अपेलेंट, 10 मिनट एडिशंस बाय डिपार्टमेंट, and then last 20 minutes conclusion and verdict by the honorable judge. This is the order of the whole program. ऐसे 2 सेशन हैं। पहला सेशन कंक्लूड होने के बाद में 5 मिनट के बाद हम दूसरा सेशन शुरू करेंगे। ऐसे 2 सेशन आज के प्रोग्राम में रखे गए हैं। जो पहला सेशन है वो आरसीएम ऑन रॉयल्टी पे है और दूसरा सेशन जो है वो जीएसटी लायबिलिटी ऑन बिल्डर्स एंड डेवलपर्स इस पे है। May I request CA Darshika Ladha to please come forward and welcome our departmental representative CMA Deepak Ji Joshi. और आपको मेमेंटो प्रदान करने के लिए CA भक्ति लड्ढा, प्लीज कम फॉरवर्ड टू प्रेजेंट अ मेमेंटो। And gift will be presented by CA Nidhi Heda. जोरदार तालियों से स्वागत CA में दीपक जोशी। CA पलक कोठारी to please come forward. CMA Deepak Joshi is a practicing cost accountant. He is a partner at Devdar Joshi and Associates. He has expertise in indirect tax litigation and consultancy, PhD in research scholar in input tax credit, that's a highly creditable, sir, and author and speaker on GST. He is the former chairman of Nasik chapter of ICMAI. Please welcome with a great applause our departmental representative today, CMA Deepak Joshi. May I request CA Vipul Patel to please come forward. CA Pritam Batra to please come forward and welcome our आज के ट्रिब्यूनल में हमारे अमरावती से our own CA आदित्य खंडेलवाल, पुष्प देकर आप उनका स्वागत करें। इन्हें मेमेंटो प्रदान करने के लिए संदीप जी सुराणा, प्लीज कम फॉरवर्ड टू प्रेजेंट मेमेंटो टू CA आदित्य खंडेलवाल। और इन्हें गिफ्ट प्रदान करने के लिए CA गिरीश चांडक टू प्लीज कम फॉरवर्ड एंड वर्धा से सीए नितिन मुंदड़ा को आमंत्रित करता हूं, कृपया सामने आए। और सीए श्रुति सारडा टू प्लीज कम फॉरवर्ड एंड ज्वाइन हिम इन वेलकमिंग हमारे आज के जज, नन अदर देन सीए अशोक जी चांडक। जिसके पहले आदित्य के लिए मैं बोलना चाहूँगा कि आप पार्टनर है जेएस खंडेलवाल एंड कंपनी, चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स, अमरावती, expertise in indirect tax litigation and consultancy, author and speaker on GST in various forums। अभी अभी GST का जो पुष्कर में रेसिडेंशियल प्रोग्राम हुआ था वहाँ पर भी आप एक दिन आपका था। एंड रिप्रेजेंटेशंस ऑन GST विथ ट्रेड बॉडीज, सेक्रेटरी ऑफ करंट सेक्रेटरी ऑफ अमरावती ब्रांच ऑफ ICAI WIRC। और हमारे अमरावती के उभरते हुए सितारे के रूप में जोरदार तालियों से आदित्य का स्वागत आप सभी करें। इनके प्राउड फादर जेएस खंडेलवाल जी, जितेंद्र जी भी हमारे साथ उपस्थित हैं। आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। और अब बारी है आज के मुख्य आकर्षण और हम सबके गुरु, सीनियर पार्टनर ऑफ शाह भाई चांडक एंड कंपनी, प्रोफेशनल एक्सपीरियंस ऑफ 5 डिकेड्स, एक्सपर्टाइज इन इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस। हमारे चांडक साहब हमारे पूरे विदर्भ और महाराष्ट्र के लिए ऐसे गौरव है, समाज रत्न है, जिन्होंने ICAI को प्रेसिडेंटशिप दी, हाईली सक्सेसफुल प्रेसिडेंटशिप, जिसकी वजह से कई नेशनल और इंटरनेशनल प्रोफेशनल बॉडीज़ में आपने हिंदुस्तान को रिप्रेजेंट किया और पूरे दुनिया में इस देश का नाम आपने किया। ही वॉज कंसल्टेंट टू द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ श्रीलंका ऑन द इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस मैटर also, and past president of ICAI for 2002 to 2003 and president of South Asian Federation of Accountants next year. Is a founder member of a government accounting standard board of C&AG। हमारे विदर्भ टैक्स प्रैक्टिशनर एसोसिएशन की भी आप पास प्रेसिडेंट हैं। अमरावती ICAI ब्रांच को जन्म देने में आपका बहुत बड़ा हाथ है, आप ही की वजह से यह ब्रांच बन पाई और हम सब लोगों पे आपका विशेष आशीर्वाद है। अमरावती शहर आपको वैसे भी बहुत प्रिय है, आपकी बुआ भी अमरावती से, आपकी भतीजी भी अमरावती से, आपके पार्टनर भी अमरावती से, तो इसलिए अमरावती से विशेष प्यार और अमरावती के हर सदस्य को नाम से व्यक्तिगत रूप से जानने वाले, सबसे रिश्ते रखने वाले, हम सबको आशीर्वाद प्रदान करने वाले फादरली फिगर आज यहाँ पर उपस्थित है। इस बात की हमें बहुत खुशी है सर। May I request CA Shruti Sarda and CA Nitin Mundada to present a flower bouquet to him and a memento and a gift. सर थोड़ा सा अगर सेंटर में आ जाए। Gift at the hands of President Damodar Khandelwal ji. Memento at the hands of CA नितिन मुंदड़ा। आराम से दे, अच्छे से फोटो निकाल, बीच में भी मत, अच्छे से, मौका नहीं मिलता भैया बार बार, इतना ये। देयर यू आर, देयर यू आर, थैंक यू सो मच। दामो भैया आप सर को लेके थोड़ा गेट से बाहर जाएंगे और जज के रूप में हम इनवाइट करेंगे। So now everybody is here. May I request to now, we have to stop the cross talking and any other activity. होटल मैनेजमेंट से रिक्वेस्ट है कि आप काउंटर एब्सोल्युटली बंद कर दीजिए, अभी कुछ मत रखिए वहाँ पर। काइंडली मेंटेन द फुल ऑर्डर ऑफ द हाउस, किसी भी प्रकार की कोई आवाज़ ना हो, मोबाइल बंद रखें। शुरू के 2 सेशन में किसी की लंबी लंबी टेलीफोन की रिंग बज रही थी इधर, बहुत ही अच्छा फ़ोन है आपका, बहुत प्यारी रिंग है उसकी, लेकिन अभी सुनने का मूड नहीं है, कृपया बंद कीजिए, शाम के बाद में फिर से सुनेंगे। अभी ट्रिब्यूनल चल रहा है, किसी प्रकार की कोई मूवमेंट ना करे, कोई बाहर ना जाए, अंदर ना आए, इतना पूरा ख्याल रखें। और जैसे कि होता है जब जज साहब आते हैं तो सब लोग आदर के साथ खड़े होके अपनी जगह पे उनका अभिवादन करते हैं। मे आई नाउ रिक्वेस्ट द जज फॉर द टुडेज मॉक ट्रिब्यूनल श्री अशोक जी चांडक साहब। Yes, sir.
Yes, now we can proceed with the hearing of the case in case of Royal Constructions Private Limited appellant versus the Commissioner of Central State GST Nashik as a respondent. May I first request the representative for the appellant to present his case.
Your Honor, may I please argue sitting in this case? Your Honor, at the outset, I would firstly like to appraise you about the brief issue of the case, that is GST liability under RCM on the royalty payments made by the construction company for extraction of material, and also with respect to all the materials that is being used in the construction activity. Brief facts are, department had issued after the conclusion of audit proceedings SCN for recovery of GST under RCM on the royalty payments made by the appellant, and this proceedings was initiated under section 74. Thereafter, appellant had duly replied in its response to the SCN that royalty is a tax. At that time, the judgment of MADA had not come. Again, appellant had also pointed out that royalty payment made by it is with respect to the materials and not with respect to the services. And SCN cannot be invoked under section 74 as the matter was already sub judice. Earlier judgment had come in India Cement, which held that royalty is a tax. Thereafter, Kesoram Cement came that royalty is not a tax. So the matter was already sub judice and pending before the 9-judge bench of Honorable Supreme Court. On this grounds, appellant had replied. Thereafter, department, without considering these facts, solely relying on the judgment of Kesoram Cement, had confirmed the demand on the ground that royalty is not a tax but a consideration. Thereafter, appellant, again on the same grounds that it had raised in the SCN, appealed before the appellate authority, Commissioner Appeals. The Commissioner Appeal, by the time the Commissioner Appeal had passed the order, judgment in MADA case had come on 14th of July 2024 that royalty is not a tax. Aggrieved by this present appeal has been filed before Your Honor. Your Honor, department in this particular case, I am beginning with my grounds in this case. Department has complete. Yes, sir.
Can you give me the date of order in show cause notice, order in original?
Order
in
in
date of show cause notice and what is the date of order in original and order in appeal?
SCN was issued on 31st of October 2023. Thereafter, the
31st October
2023.
23.
Yes.
SCN.
Yes.
Okay.
Order in original was passed on 31st of December 2023.
Okay. And then
Appeal was filed on 25th of March 2024.
And order in appeal?
Order in appeal was passed on 25th of September 2025. 5th of September 2025.
Okay. OIO is passed by?
Commissioner Appeals.
No, that is OIA is passed by the
Commissioner Appeals.
And OIO
is passed by Commissioner.
Okay.
Joint Commissioner, sorry.
Okay, proceed.
Yeah. Sir, grounds in brief are the judgment in case of Mineral Area Development Authority versus Steel Authority of India of 2024 is completely misconstrued by the department. Department has relied only on one conclusion of the judgment, that is royalty is not a tax. Department has not gone into the facts of that particular case and whether also in the case of the appellant.
Okay.
the judgment has concluded that royalty is not a tax, but it has not touched upon the aspect whether such royalty is paid for procurement of goods or for procurement of services.
Okay.
I would like to bring your attention to para 2.1.9, that is the definition of royalty which is given in the Maharashtra Minor Mineral Extraction Development and Regulation Rules 2013. I am particularly trying to bring your attention to this definition is because in the present case, royalty payments are made in respect of the minor minerals, which is sand, gravel, or in common parlance we call murum, and the crushed stone. So these materials, mining of these materials is governed by the MMDR Act 1957, and in accordance with that act, these rules have come into picture, and it has defined royalty in Rule 2O. Royalty means a charge payable to the government in respect of ore or mineral excavated, removed, or utilized from any land. Here, sir, excavated, removed, and utilized from any land is the particular phrase which we have to consider. It is not just digging on which royalty is to be paid, it is after the material is, in respect of the material removed, excavated, the royalty is supposed to be paid. It is not just for digging. Your Lordship, royalty is a consideration which is for the procurement of goods. In para 125 to 127 of the MADA case, the Honorable Apex Court has categorically analyzed that royalty is paid for obtaining and winning the material from the land, and the government loses the exclusive privilege over such minerals. I would like to bring your attention to para 2.2.1, wherein the relevant extract of the judgment is reproduced. There, in that relevant extract, para 126 says, the proprietor charges royalty as a consideration for parting with the right to win the minerals. Thereafter, in para 127, it is also observed that through the mining lease, the government parts with the exclusive privilege over mineral rights. My Lordship, here it is important to note that the right here we are talking about is not the right in goods, it is not the right to use the goods, but right in goods. Thereafter, in para 2.2.3, we would like to place reliance on the judgment of HRS Murthy versus Collector of Chittur, wherein it was categorically held that royalty connotes payment made for minerals or minerals won from the land. Also, we would like to place reliance on the judgment of Behrulal versus State of Rajasthan 1956 SCC, Rajasthan 9, page 8. This case was also relied upon by the Honorable Apex Court in the MADA judgment, where the meaning of royalty was given. The concluding para said that it is clear therefore that royalty is a charge by the owner of minerals from those to whom he gives the concession to remove them, and the charge is on production and the rate being fixed according to the weight. Thus it is evident that royalty is a consideration paid for obtaining the materials and not just right. Now once it is established that royalty is paid for obtaining the goods, the question of recovering RCM under notification 13/17 of central tax rate does not arise, because this notification is particularly with respect to the services. Another, if at all we assume that royalty is paid for obtaining the lease, then such lease is with respect to the land. Such payment of royalty is with respect to the right in land. If that is so,
Which paragraph you are referring?
para 2.4.
Hmm?
Para 2.4.
Okay.
If at all it is said that royalty is payment for lease. Now, if it is lease of land, then also notification 13 by 2017 would not apply, as entry number 5 of the said notification has exclusively, it has made an exception for lease of land. Thereafter, sir, if at all we treat royalty payment as a composite supply, now that this composite supply would include permission to enter into land, permission to dig the hole, and then permission to extract the minerals. Now, the ultimate objective is to win the minerals from the land. If that becomes the principal supply, then also royalty would not, RCM would not be applicable on the royalty. Now, with respect to there was another allegation made by the department with respect to the royalty deductions made in the RA bills by the respective departments for whom the construction activities are undertaken. Now, in that case, sir, those royalty deductions are merely deposits to ensure that the materials used, the minor minerals used in the execution of contract are not illegally excavated. Once the contractor produces royalty receipts to the government, respective departments of the government, they refund the deposit which is already deducted in the RA bill. However, in case if for some reason the contractor is not able to produce the royalty receipts, such unrecoverable deposits become the expenses of the contractor. Now, in this case also, the original, if at all it is assumed that royalty GST is chargeable, but contractor is not the person who has excavated them. Someone else has done it. Only because contractor is unable to produce the royalty receipts, it doesn't mean that contractor has excavated the land. So in that case also, royalty should not be applicable where the royalty deductions is made in the RA bill. Sir, the basic premise, that is the jurisdictional challenge of this show cause notice also issued in this case. Section 74 cannot be invoked in this case because the matter was still sub judice. Earlier in the judgment of India Cements in 1989, it was a 7-judge bench which ruled that royalty is not a tax, is a tax. Thereafter, in 2004, Kesoram Cement came and it said that royalty is not a tax. Now, in Kesoram Cement, it clarified that there is some clerical error in the judgment of India Cements. However, the India Cement judgment would naturally prevail because it is a 7-judge bench, and this was also observed by Justice Nagaratna in the MADA judgment also. Because MADA judgment is 8:1 judgment, and the dissenting view of Justice Nagaratna also pointed out the same thing. Now, this MADA case first went before the constitutional bench of the Honorable Supreme Court, which then referred it to the 9-judge bench. And this decision has come lately in 2024. So, there is no, it was beyond doubt of the appellant that royalty is not payable on the, GST is not payable on royalty since it is a tax which is already decided by India Cements. So, therefore, Section 74 should not have been invoked. If at all any liability is to be fastened upon the taxpayer, it should be under 73, if at all any liability. Thank you. So, accordingly, it is prayed that the order in appeal should be set aside, demand should be deleted, interest payable should be deleted, penalty imposed under 74 should be deleted, and refund of the pre-deposit should be granted.
Anything more?
Thank you, sir.
You have mentioned, just before I ask you, some clarification from you. you have mentioned two things. SCN is issued for a 5 years period.
Extended period.
SCN is issued covering a 5 years period, 17, 18 to 23, 24.
Yes, 20 to 23.
22, 23. It's a
Yes.
single SCN.
In the single SCN.
Are you challenging that part?
No, I'm not challenging that
Okay.
part.
73, 74 you are challenging.
Yes.
73. Okay. You can.
Your Honor, as rightly mentioned by learned counsel, present matter is about the taxability of mining rights under the reverse charge mechanism. And this issue is very important because, and the Honorable Tribunal is requested to decide the various question of law, like what is mining lease, what right does it creates, what is royalty, what is the precise character of the payment, is the mining constitute as a supply under the GST law, and if yes, then whether it is supply of goods or supply of services, and if it is supply of services, then whether the reverse charge applicability under notification number 13/2017 central tax rate attracts, and then section 74 which is invoked by the department. So these are the precise question of law which the tribunal is requested to examine in the present case. Before discussing on the grounds of appeal which are put before the bench by the learned appellant, the defense would like to highlight some important concepts which are relevant to take the or for the understanding of this case. What is lease? Section 105 of the Transfer of Property Act 1882 defines the concept lease as a lease of immovable property, transfer of right to enjoy such property. So precisely it is transfer of right to enjoy the property made for certain time, express or implied or in perpetuity in consideration of price, paid or promised of money, share of crop service, etc. So the critical feature of this definition is the right to enjoy the immovable property. When it comes to license, what is license? Section 52 of the Indian Easement Act defines license as a right granted by one person to another to do or continue to do in upon the immovable property or grantor something. When we correlate or when we compare this lease versus license, it is found that the lease create interest in the property, whereas the license only permits to do some specific act. As my learned friend has highly relied upon the MADA judgment, the respondent would like to highlight the para 85 of the MADA judgment, wherein the Honorable Supreme Court referred the decision of Supreme Court in the Associated Hotels of India versus R.N. Kapoor, wherein the Honorable Supreme Court has recorded that a lease creates an interest in property while license only permits to make use of property. So it is very essential at this juncture to understand what is interest in property and what is use of property. Your Honor, understanding mining lease is also very important as far as this case is concerned. The Mines and Minerals Development Regulation Act 1957 defines mineral lease as lease granted for the purpose of undertaking mining operations and includes sublease granted for such purpose. Mining operations means operation undertaken for the purpose of winning any minerals. The 9-judge constitution bench in the case of MADA explained the characteristic of the mining lease. The court has specified in para 83 that what is mining lease? Mining lease has been held by this court to be right to enjoy the immovable property. So it is the right which is given by the government to enjoy that immovable property. Further, in para 322 of the MADA judgment, the right and interest in the minerals specified in the mining lease are transferred from the state government to the leasee on the specified day of commencement of the lease deed. And this is very important because the learned counsel was arguing that the royalty is paid for the immovable or for the goods which are embedded in the earth. But royalty is not paid at the time of removing those goods. It is clearly mentioned by the Honorable Supreme Court that the lease rent or the royalty is, or the mining lease starts from the date of commencement of the lease deed. And at that moment, the leasee is supposed to pay the royalty, advance royalty to the government. In para 323, the court held that once the interest in the mineral is transferred under the mining lease, the leasee acquires the right to work the mine and win the minerals. So unless the leasee pays that royalty amount, he is not allowed to enter on that land. He is not allowed to dig. He is not allowed to win any minerals or extract any minerals. So it is the minerals which he found in the earth is the final outcome. But what royalty he is paying is for all these services which the government has granted him to do on that land. Now, what is royalty? My friend, he referred the definition of mining rules to Rule 2.0 of Maharashtra mining rules. And this is the heart of matter, Your Honor. The Supreme Court, in the case of MADA judgment, because again rule para 95 was referred by learned counsel, but the para was not completely referred by him. So in the same para, the Honorable Supreme Court has referred the judgment of D.K. Trivedi and Sons versus State of Gujarat. In para 95, the Honorable Supreme Court distinguished the concept of royalty and lease deed. The Supreme Court has stated that since the mining lease confers upon the leasee right not merely to enjoy the property as under the ordinary lease, but also extract minerals from the land and appropriate them for his own use or benefit in addition to the usual rent for the area demise. Then Supreme Court, again the para 98 which was referred by the learned counsel, Supreme Court has specified the 4 essential characteristics to decide whether the consideration paid is royalty or not. The first principle which the Supreme Court has stated in para 98 is, it is the consideration or payment made to the proprietor of mineral, either government or private person, which was precisely referred by the arguing counsel. It flows from the statutory agreement, a mining lease between the leaser and leasee. It represents a return, and this is very important, it is represent a return for the grant of privilege of removing or consuming of the minerals. So it is the privilege, it is the right which is granted by the government to the leasee to extract or to remove the minerals, which is precisely a process. Now, when my learned friend argued that it is goods, when we are dealing with the transaction of goods, it is basically the agreement between the two persons. One is buyer and one is seller, where the price of such goods is agreed upon. In this case, if we take the logic of learned counsel, the price of goods is restricted to the extent of royalty, which is not the case. Second thing, government is not selling the minerals to the leasee. It is the leasee, by getting the permission from the government, digging the land and extracting the minerals. So, there is no price agreed between the government and the leasee with respect to the sale of such minerals. Second thing, there is no transfer of title in goods from government to the leasee. Therefore, we cannot characterize this transaction as the sale of goods transaction. Now, my learned friend in his argument stated that the department passed the impugned order only on the basis that royalty is not the tax, based on the MADA judgment, and no other aspects were examined by the appellate authority. The primary contention of the appellate authority to reject the order or to confirm the order on the basis of MADA judgment was the reliance which was placed by the appellant in his submission before the appellate authority that the royalty paid by the leasee to the government is in the nature of tax. And then the appellant referred the decision of India Cement in his submission, and to rebut or to give the reasoning to that particular submission of the appellate authority has confirmed by referring to the judgment of MADA, wherein the Honorable Supreme Court has clearly mentioned that tax is not, royalty is not in the nature of tax, it is consideration, and that is why the appellate authority has confirmed the demand on that ground. So, the decision of the appellate authority was correct in the submission of defense. My learned friend has also referred that royalty is consideration for goods, not a consideration for service, and thereby the provision of notification number 13/2017 is not applicable. The defense would like to state that again the MADA judgment has given the decisive judgment answer as to whether it is goods or services. Not exactly, but if we can extract the principles from the order or from the judgment, we could easily establish that this is the service. In para 98 of the MADA judgment, the Supreme Court has enumerated the characteristic of the royalty, wherein in the third point, the Supreme Court has stated that royalty represent a return for grant of privilege of removing or consuming of the mineral. The defense has already stated that this is the process. When you are extracting anything or when you are consuming anything, it is the process. The court further in para 123 stated that the liability to pay royalty arises out of the contractual condition of the mining lease, and the royalty paid as a consideration for enjoyment of the mineral rights. So at many places the Supreme Court has quoted this particular phrase, enjoyment of the mineral rights. In para 98, when we read para 98, para 123, 127 together, we found that royalty is consideration paid for the grant of a privilege specially, and this privilege is not restricted only to the extent of getting the minerals. The privilege is given to enter on such land. The privilege is given to work on that mine. The privilege is given to win the minerals. The privilege is given to remove or consume the minerals. So it is series of activities which is covered within the meaning of the grant. And that is why the leasee as a consequences is exercising the mineral rights, which is precisely in view of the defense is the service, and which is subject to the reverse charge mechanism under notification number 13/2017. The defense would also highlight, would like to highlight that minerals are goods and royalty is consideration for those goods is legally not tenable. For the reason, the MADA judgment in para number 322 and 323 stated that the interest in the minerals is transferred to the leasee upon the execution of the mining lease and not upon the extraction. Further, section 9 of the MMDR Act states that the royalty is payable on removal or consumption. In para 88, the MADA judgment, the court observed that under a lease deed for mining operation, the owners transfers the interest in the minerals to the leasee in lieu of payment of rent. So, and as mentioned by the council, he referred to rule 2O of the Maharashtra Minor Minerals Extraction Rules, wherein the royalty is defined as the charge payable in respect of ore on minerals excavated. But in the opinion of the defense, it is not the providing the true nature of the definition of royalty, because the character, it is just talking about the charge, but it is not talking about the character of the transaction. What is the character? So merely description is not sufficient in order to decide whether royalty is service or not, but the character of the transaction is also important. And when the appellant is paying royalty amount to the government, essentially he is purchasing he is paying the price for purchase of those rights. Now my friend has also stated that the appellant is not supposed to pay RCM on the RA bills for the royalty receipts which are not produced before the governmental authority. Now, what is royalty receipt basically? Royalty receipt basically shows that the revenue with respect to the various natural resources such as a stone is properly paid to the respective department of the government. Now, in absence of such evidence, it is not certain whether the particular person who extracted those natural resources has paid the amount to the mining development authority. And that is why the department or the government authority who is giving the contract, in absence of such proofs, they are reducing that royalty amount and they are paying that amount to the mining development authorities. Now, the Learned Council has stated that the third person may have paid that amount to the government. or for that matter we will say that the third person has paid the royalty amount to the government. But what is the proof? We cannot say that, or we cannot take the shelter that he has not given the appropriate proofs to me. And when the appellant is accepting the reduced payment on account of non-payment of royalty to the government, he is accepting that whether by mechanical route or by the actual route. He is accepting that the royalty was not paid by the principal person to the government, and ultimately the cost is borne by the appellant, which is precisely a taxable event for the purpose of levying of reverse charge mechanism under notification number 13/2017. Then my learned friend has also argued that extended period of limitation was not applicable in this case. My lord, in this case, it was the department who identified this point during the audit under section 65. If the appellant is of the opinion that he was of the genuine belief that tax is not payable on such transaction, or he relied on the judgment of the Supreme Court in the various cases or high courts, why before the audit he has not intimated to the department that, look, this is the question of law which is not decided by the judiciaries, so we preferred not to pay the tax. So in order to avoid the penalty of section 74, now appellant is taking the plea that no, it is the bona fide case, we relied on that case and that is why we have not paid. Now if the position was so strong that the appellant was of the opinion that tax is not payable, why they paid the tax after the audit under section 65, stating that we are paying under the protest, whereas there is no concept of payment of tax under protest in the under the provisions of the GST. And that is why the department has identified this point. This was suppression of fact, this was misdeclaration, not declared, the appellant not declared such amount in their returns, and that is why the department has correctly invoked section 74 in this case. So we request your honor to set aside the grounds of appeal which are praised by the learned counsel before the bench and confirm the demand which was initiated by the adjudicating authority.
Yeah. Somewhere you have stated, I think synopsis of the case for GST, you have stated that the company holds a requisite permit to remove building stones from the land upon payment of advance royalty of 1 crore and surface rent of 1 lakh. The date of these payments are not stated. When you paid a 1 crore rupees and when you paid a 1 lakh rupees. This synopsis of the case what you have mentioned. Given.
Right. It was during the period of undertaken in audit 2018-19 to 2022-23.
It is
so
during the period.
Yeah, it is the consolidated sum, total sum, not year-wise.
Okay. Take it. Now you can submit your rejoinder to what you have, what has been argued.
My learned friend, counsel for the department, has on various occasions in the beginning of his argument has pointed out that royalty is paid for right to enjoy the immovable property. Your Honor, as I had already pointed out, if at all, in my earlier submission, that if at all royalty is treated as payment towards immovable property, then it is not liable to RCM under GST by virtue of notification 13 by 17, because 13 by 17 has expressly carved out the renting of immovable property from the purview of RCM liability. Next, he pointed out that advance payment of royalty, advance payment of royalty, only I get the right to dig, to extract the material from the land or to process that land. Your Honor, if we refer to the section 9 of the MMDR Act and the rules, Maharashtra minor mineral rules, royalty is liable to be paid when the material is removed or consumed. So the charge is on the removal and consumption of the material. Advance payment of royalty, just like in GST, is a time specified for the payment of royalty. Now, let's say if I pay royalty of rupees for 200 brass, 200 brass, 300 brass of material, and if I do not excavate it, I get the refund of the royalty which I have already paid. So it is just an advance payment. It does not say that I can enter the land only upon the payment of the royalty. In the instant case, land is particularly owned by me. I can go into the land and come out whenever I want. It is only for extracting the material I am paying the royalty. Even if I dig the land and none of the material is excavated out of the land, even then royalty is not payable. If it is consumed on that land or removed from that land, I mean for captive consumption, or then removed out of the land, only then royalty is payable. Otherwise royalty is not payable. If at all, advance payment of royalty is just a time of supply like in GST. Now, my learned friend said that I get the privilege of entering into the land or digging that land and then removing the material after payment of the royalty. So this should be a service. Sir, again, I would like to press that royalty is a charge on the removal of material only. It is advance payment is contemplated only for the recovery. I mean, it is the manner of recovery of taxes. And what is the whole point of digging the land if paying the royalty for just digging the land if material is not removed? It is only for removal of material the royalty is being paid. Then my learned friend has referred to para 98 of the MADA judgment, wherein he has pressed upon the third point, which says royalty represents a return for the grant of privilege of removing or consuming the minerals. It is grant of privilege. Privilege of what? Right in that mineral or right to use that mineral. Now, once I remove certain minerals from the land, let's say stone, or let's say if sand is there, once I get that upon the payment of royalty, I can do whatever I want with that. I can sell it, I can use it, I can put it back again in the land. So royalty is paid only with respect to the material which is excavated. And royalty is paid for getting the absolute right in that mineral, that is, and not right to use that mineral. If I have already used a mineral, I cannot return it back to the government, and that is not also expected. Then my learned friend referred to this very para 98 to say that it has decisively mentioned that royalty is paid for services. Your Honor, Supreme Court has not touched upon the issue to decide whether royalty is paid for getting the goods or for services. Royalty itself is a consideration. In general parlance, we know that royalty is paid against patent rights or copyrights or trademarks. But in this very particular case, royalty is paid for mineral obtaining the mineral from the land, from the subsurface of the land. Supreme Court has not decided in this manner, nor it was asked to it, that whether royalty is paid for services or goods. So this was not at all decided. It is, we are only referring to the various judgments quoted in the MADA case, which highlights or which gives you a fair opinion about the payment of royalty, which is getting the absolute right in the minerals. Now, with respect to the material royalty in respect of a royalty charged or deducted in the RA bill, even the department here, my learned friend has rightly mentioned, department itself is not certain whether I have procured it or I have self-extracted the material in respect of the royalty deduction from the RA bill. So it is a mere assumption of the department that I have made payment, I was supposed to make payment of the royalty, that royalty is not paid by me, that's why deducted by the department from the RA bill, and that's where GST is payable under RCM. It is a mere assumption. And if at all it is, if at all I am not able to provide with the royalty receipts, there could be many reasons for it. I might have misplaced them. The supplier, though has genuinely issued me an invoice for the material charging GST, but has not given me the royalty receipt. Also, since last 4 to 5 years, royalty receipts are generated on the mobile. They are not physically given for the transport of, at least for the transport of sand. So it is generated on the mobile. The person who is excavating the sand generates the royalty receipts, gives it to the WhatsApp it to the driver, and driver may or might not have given it to me. So that could be another case. Now, presuming that royalty should have been paid by me only, department is alleging that I have used illegally mined materials in the project, in the government project. So that is not the case. Unrecoverable amount of royalty deposit does not mean that I have used illegal mining mined minerals in the project, and does not contemplate that I was supposed to pay royalty to the government. It is someone else who has already paid it. I was supposed to get the reimbursement of deposit from the RA bills. However, in the since I failed to produce the royalty receipts, that deposit was not refunded. Now, with respect to again section 74, my learned friend pointed out that I should have informed the department that so and so cases are pending and that's why I am not paying the royalty. Information is given to the department for something which has happened. Something which is not happening, what am I supposed to inform to the department? Thereafter, department has said that I have already paid that, it is the fact that I have paid the taxes under protest and there is no provision to pay taxes under protest under GST. Payment of taxes under protest is in line with the principle of natural justice. Right? It need not be specifically coming into the law. Now, I have paid the taxes under protest because the matter was already sub judice. It could have been the case that case would have gone against me or might have come in my favor. So, only to prove that I have a bona fide intention, I have paid the taxes under protest. I am also agreeing to pay the interest liability if at all the case is decided in against me. Further, the taxes were paid for the entire lot of 5 years. I did not pay selecting only the last 3 years, pointing that it should have been paid under, this notice should have been under 73. Entire taxes were paid during the audit proceedings, before the adjudication proceeding, and it was paid only under protest, because if at all in a future that something might go against me, my bona fide intention should be presented, and this is how I would be presenting my bona fide intention before the department.
One question. According to you, for which period 74 cannot be invoked?
For
You
more
have
than,
a 5 years.
yes,
Out of 5 years, for which period 74 cannot be invoked?
in the present case for 1819 and 1920, since the due date of annual return
1819 and 1920.
20,
1819 for what reason?
since it is beyond the scope of 73, and
Thirty-
similar reason for 1920.
31 till 2019, 3 years period is to be counted.
3 years period is to be
And
counted.
same also the case with 31 12 2020, 3 years
3
period.
years
is
period to be counted.
You have something?
My learned friend again took the reference of Rule 2O, stating that royalty charge. It is the
Please
de-
don't repeat what you have argued
Yes.
or what he has said, but then new, if anything is
it is delegated
yeah,
legislation,
yeah.
and the decision given by the Supreme Court, wherein they have defined what is the royalty, is the land of law, which we are supposed to follow.
Correct.
Again, he pressed upon the privilege, which is precisely referred in para 98 of the Supreme Court judgment, wherein he stated that it is privilege to get the goods. But again, the question is that whether goods comes first or rest of the things comes first. Even if it is his own land, the appellant is having control over the land, not below the land. And for that purpose, the department has given the mining lease. Without accepting, the defense would like to state that in Schedule 1 to the CGST Act, in case of lease of land, it is specifically mentioned as the service. So we cannot say that in one case of leasing it will be treated as goods, in another case it will be treated as service. Regarding royalty deduction, he said that there are a number of reasons for not providing the evidences to the department or to the governmental authority. But law runs on the facts. If you are not able to produce the facts before the governing authority, the benefit cannot be given to the appellant. And ultimately, if he is bearing that cost, and when he is unable to produce that, the royalty amount is already given to the respective department, the invocation of notification number 13/2017 is correct. Then he also pressed upon the royalty. Nowhere the defense, in fact, he also mentioned that the Supreme Court in the case of MADA not described what is the treatment in case of GST. In the initial defense only, I have stated that we required to grab the principle. What is the crux of the decision? And again he mentioned that it is the consideration which is calculated based on the final outcome. So again, in case of MADA, the Supreme Court has differentiated that the levy is different thing and means is different thing. So levy, for example, in case of GST, levy is supply, but the means is valuation. So precisely in this case, what is the taxable event? The taxable event is granting of lease of mining lease is the levy. What is the means? How to calculate? That is based on the production or maybe on the sale. And lastly, section 74, again the defense would like to press that appellant was of the genuine belief that in the present case, tax is not payable, he should have taken the recourse to not pay that tax amount to the department. And there are alternate means or way to communicate to the department that tax is not payable. But no such recourse, no such way was taken by the appellant, and that is why section 74 was correctly invoked by the department.
Can you point out any provision in the GST law which requires a communication to the department?
There is no such provision under the GST law which specifically states that
Specifically, impliedly, whatever the case may be.
because section 74 gives the department right to state that or to levy the tax on the assessee or taxpayer when there is fraud, there is suppression of fact, there is misstatement. What is suppression of fact is defined under section 74, wherein it is stated that whatever, now again what is the quantum and what is the interpretation of that is another matter, but whatever is the required information that assessee or that taxpayer is supposed to provide to the department is what the view of the defense.
Well, I heard both of you. If organizers permit me, before I give my verdict, I would like to say something about the procedure and what is to be done and what is not to be done. As I asked you one question about bunching of the show cause notice. This is really a burning question going on, though it has been referred to on a larger bench of the Bombay High Court. But when we file our appeal, till the time the conclusion decision is not coming, we must take that as a ground. Yes. And had you would have taken that ground, and probably appeal would have been decided today itself, that the tribunal was duty bound to follow the earlier 3 judgments of the Bombay High Court and set aside your order in entirety. This is one fact. Secondly, whenever you file an appeal or argue the appeal, please argue the technical ground first. Please argue the technical ground first. Which is the technical ground here? Section 74. So unless you argue section 74 first, you need not proceed on a merits. And there are most likely chances that on a technical ground, people can get to success. And in that situation, you need not go for arguing the matters on a merit, etc. Of course, nowadays the tribunal asks you the technical as well as merit both together. But it is possible that even after hearing you, they may decide the matter only on a technical ground and you get a relief. This is second aspect which I would like to say. Third aspect which I would like to mention is, please give all dates in your statement of facts. Because now if I want to decide whether the 74 applies or not, I don't have a dates. I have to take those dates from you. So please give all the dates. Please give the precise fact, what is the date of show cause notice, and there is also a requirement that show cause notice need to be adjudicated, how much delay there, etc., etc. All those things are there. So these are all aspects which are to be taken into account while filing and drafting the appeal. I think I have mentioned this as just for the information of all. Now I come to the case per se. Since I have mentioned that firstly we must decide the technical object. Therefore, I would first try to decide section 74 challenge. Now, section 74 challenge, I find that your show cause notice is 31/10/2023 and OIA is 31/12/2023. So there is a 3 months gap between show cause notice and OIO. And OII is not relevant for this purpose. Now coming to the section 74 requirement, I am in agreement with the appellant that 74 is not invoked properly. I do find a substantial force in what you have argued. The dispute regarding the nature of royalty was really a most debatable issue, I would say. India Cement decided that it is a tax. Kesharam thereafter said that there is a mistake. Again the matter comes and the matter goes to the larger bench, 9-bench judgment, and then thereafter discussed. So at least that is 24th July 2024, there was a reasonable dispute that whether the tax is required to be paid or not. And therefore appellant is entitled to take a view that possibly this is not at all a supply and therefore he need not show that as required under the GST Act. Maybe that's why I ask you a specific question, that whether there is any provision. If the service or a supply is exempt, there is a specific requirement in the Act to show it. If you are not shown that in a written, possibly to that extent there would be a concealment. But if it is not at all a supply, no law requires to provide it in the written, etc. Further, everything was already recorded in a books of accounts. It was also recorded in a profit and loss account and a balance sheet, and most likely considering the turnover and amount which has been paid as a royalty, the accounts must have been audited accounts. So things would have been audited. These facts also you need to mention when you make a presentation of your case, that my accounts were audited, things were already disclosed, etc. And there are n number of judgments. We say that if the things are already disclosed in the books of account, if the things are available in the records of the appellant, there cannot be any case of concealment. Now question thereafter arises is whether there is a willful separation of that also, and in case of a willful separation, mens rea is definitely required, but that has been way of deans in the morning, and here there was a justified reason that because of this all judicial thing, there was a justified reason for a person to consider that it is not a supply. Payment of a tax, and I agree that there is no provision in the GST law for making a payment of tax under protest. But payment of tax, whether protest or otherwise, is always a payer's prerogative. He can always say that I am discharging this burden for a time being, not as a tax, but as a kind of a deposit or whatever you may take it thereafter. And therefore, that would not decide the matter whether the appellant was aware and he has misclassified or misstated or willfully evaded any tax. According to me, it is not a case of section 74. Having concluded that it is not a case of section 74, next question arises whether section 73 itself can be invoked or not. Now, as pointed out, and I think Mr. Ashish Shah also mentioned in his slide, that so far as year 18, 19 is concerned, last date for passing an order under section 73(10) was 30th April 2024. And if we take it as a date of passing the last date for passing an order as a 30th April 2024, possibly this case is squarely covered in section 73 matter, and thus the matter could proceed under section 73. But section 74 is not attracted, and since section 74 is not attracted, possibly payment, the penalty imposed under section 74 is required to be set aside. Right? Now I come to the part of royalty. What is a royalty? Both sides has mentioned and heavily relied upon a decision of Honorable Supreme Court in a case of MADA. I have this. No problem. MADA. Now, this entire case background everybody knows. Both of them have argued all these things. According to my opinion, MADA had conclusively decided the matter that royalty is a payment or a consideration, contractual obligation consideration, payment of royalty for availment of a mineral right and not for purchase or a procurement of goods. It is not a case of procurement of goods. It is a case of getting a right to excavate that land and take out the mineral. Whatever kind of a mineral, you may get a coal, you may get a boron, you may get a sand, whatever the case may be. That mineral you have to extract. Now the argument of the appellant is that it is measured with reference to the quantity extracted. Now quantity extracted, as rightly pointed out by the learned departmental representative, is a kind of a valuation mechanism. It is not a decisive factor whether you are procuring the goods or you are procuring the services. According to me, after the MADA judgment, there is no doubt remaining that whatever has been procured is a right, not a goods. Right you have procured, and therefore according to me, section notification 13 by 17 squarely applies qua that part of the royalty payment. Third issue again arises is royalty paid, or rather royalty deduction from an RA bill. Now, in my opinion, there is a difference between a royalty paid directly by the appellant to the government and deduction made by the government from the RA bills. Now, why the basic nature of this is, this kind of a clause is there because government wants that for their work, no illegal material should be used. And if you procure from other sources, we will deduct a royalty, we will make it as a deposit, and after accepting the deposit, if you produce us the royalty receipt, we will refund it. There is no direct link of excavating the mineral and payment of a royalty to the government. Maybe the royalty might have been routed through government to the mineral department, whatever the case may be. It is also possible, like we used to have in an old BST Act cases, if you make a claim of a resale, and if you are unable to produce the purchase invoice from a taxable person, resale was to be disallowed and you were required to pay the tax. So it could be a case that you have procured the material from some other, but no way the department is in a position to establish that the mineral is excavated by the appellant. The tax is required or royalty is required to be paid in relation to excavation of the material, and since they fail to produce their what you call royalty receipt, it could be the forfeiture, it could be kind of a forfeiture of that deposit, and everybody knows that what is a nature of a forfeiture. Forfeiture means a penalty and it is not a tax at all. Therefore, on that count, whatever RA bill deductions are there, on that the notification 13 will not apply. I think we have concluded this part. That is I think there is no other issue. Yes. And therefore, in a situation, my order would be invocation of section 74 is not sustainable, though entire case is within the limitation of section 73. It is held that royalty paid by the appellant for extraction of a mineral under mining permits lease constitute a consideration for supply of service, not for procurement of a goods, and attracts the GST under reverse charge mechanism. Demand relating to minerals procured from third party supplies and a royalty deduction from RA bill without proof of a royalty is liable to be set aside, and that is set aside to that extent. However, since I do not have the details before me, how much was the royalty paid in relation to the procure, etc., I remand back this matter on this limited issue to verify what is an amount of a royalty paid, etc., and accordingly appeal is partly allowed. Thank you very much. I must record appreciation for both the parties, both the council, for very nicely presenting their case. Thank you very much.
आप तीनों की एक जॉइंट फोटो। एक बार जोरदार तालियां इस जबरदस्त डेलिब्रेशन के लिए। It was quite a learning experience for all of us, and I thank all of you for the patient listening. चाय जो है वो टेबल पे सर्व होने वाली है, कृपया पीछे ना जाए टेबल पे। पानी भी टेबल पे सर्व हो रहा है, and if you are allowed, then we can proceed with the next more interesting session of tribunal, mock tribunal immediately. अगर आपसे इजाज़त हो तो शुरू कर सकते हैं। शुरू करें? थैंक यू सो मच। वैसे कोई ऑप्शन नहीं था, बट फिर भी आपसे इजाज़त लेकर आगे बढ़ते हैं। आई रिक्वेस्ट फॉर द नेक्स्ट सेशन सीए राज खोना साहब टू प्लीज कम ओवर हियर एंड ऑक्यूपाई द चेयर। एडवोकेट राहुल ठाकर टू प्लीज कम ओवर हियर एंड ऑक्यूपाई द चेयर। सीए परेश साहू से विनती है कि कृपया सामने आए। परेश गया, अब जाने वाले ज़्यादा है, रहने वाले कम है, आखिरी सेशन है। सीए विष्णु भैया सोनी, पास्ट चेयरमैन ऑफ द ICAI अमरावती से रिक्वेस्ट है कृपया सामने आए और सीए राज खोना साहब का यहाँ पर स्वागत करें। लर्नेड अपेलेट के रिप्रेजेंटेटिव के रूप में मुंबई से पधारे सीए राज खोना साहब, 10+ years of experience in tax advisory litigation, compliance advisor to Fortune 500 companies, worked with leading law and auditing firms in India, speaker at various professional forums, and actively engaged in leadership roles across professional bodies. आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है. May I now request जमर जी, आइए, अमित जी जमर साहब, to welcome Advocate Rahul Thakkar Sahab, practicing advocate at CB Thakkar and Company, CACS with expertise in indirect tax, litigation and consultancy since 14+ years. इधर सामने से आना, आपको फोटो अच्छा निकलेगा. इधर से. हाँ. He is author and speaker on GST on various forums and Vice President of the Sales Tax Tribunal Bar Association and Joint Secretary of GSTPM. अमरावती में हर साल स्पीकर के रूप में विशेष रूप से आमंत्रित किए जाने वाले एडवोकेट राहुल ठक्कर जी का जोरदार तालियों से आप स्वागत करें. लंच के बाद थोड़ा आराम करके एकदम फ्रेश होकर आए हैं. सो ही विल बी वेरी एग्रेसिव इन हिज प्रेजेंटेशंस ओवर हियर. और इसके पहले कि मैं जज साहब को यहाँ पे आमंत्रित करूँ, मैं उनसे रिक्वेस्ट करने वाला हूँ कि आज के हमारे सेमिनार के जो कन्वीनर्स हैं वो चारों भी कन्वीनर्स का यहाँ पे स्मृति चिन्ह देकर आप उनका सम्मान करें. मैं आमंत्रित कर रहा हूँ इस कार्य के लिए टीबीए अमरावती के अध्यक्ष सीए डीडी खंडेलवाल, सचिव सीए श्रेणिक बोथरा और हमारे आज के जज श्री अशोक जी चांडक साहब कृपया सामने आए और श्री एडवोकेट धनंजय जी अखाड़े साहब कृपया सामने आए. हमारे जो चारों कन्वेनर हैं उन्हें मैं आमंत्रित करता हूं. उन्हें हम यहाँ पर मेमेंटो प्रदान कर रहे हैं. सीए दिनेश राजदेव, एडवोकेट संदीप अग्रवाल, सीए पवन जाजू, एडवोकेट यश शर्मा, चारों एक साथ आए और एक साथ कृपया स्वीकार करें. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया के साथ, बहुत बहुत बधाई के साथ आपकी मेहनत के लिए. टीबीए, वीटीपीए और जीएसटीपीएम का ये एनुअल फीचर है. ये जो सेमिनार यहाँ पे फुल डे इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस में आयोजित किया जाता है और अब की बार इस वर्ष में लेट श्री शरद चंद्र जी खांडेकर साहब चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट की याद में उनके सम्मान में आयोजित किया गया. आप चारों ने ज़बरदस्त मेहनत करके सभी शहरों में विजिट करके पर्सनली मुलाकात करके रजिस्ट्रेशंस के लिए मोटिवेट किया सबको और यहाँ हम सबका बहुत बहुत ध्यान रखा. आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. थैंक यू सो मच. एक ग्रुप फोटो. आ जाओ. थैंक यू सो मच. और अब हम सेशन की ओर बढ़ रहे हैं. जैसे कि पहले भी सेशन में हमने किया था, जज साहब बाहर से आए थे और फिर हम सब उनके सम्मान में खड़े रहे थे. तो ये जो सेकंड टेक्निकल सेशन है इसमें हमारे जज साहब को अब हम आमंत्रित करने वाले हैं. आई होप एवरीबडी इज सेटल्ड. लेट अस इनवाइट to our honorable judge advocate Dhananjay ji Akhade sahab to the tribunal. Shri Akhade sahab joined the department as sales tax officer class 1 in 1991. He retired as additional commissioner from Pune zone in 2024, extensive experience in assessment, appeals, investigations, LTU and tribunal associated with GST law drafting process, felicitated at the hands of Honorable Finance Minister, Government of India, and great expertise in GST consultancy and litigation. We feel honored that today, to train all of us, he has found some time to act as the judge at the mock tribunal at this session. May I now request him to commence the proceedings.
Today, the matter before this tribunal is in case of Amba Constructions versus Commissioner of Central Goods and Service Tax, Nagpur. May I request the appellant side to proceed with their argument.
Hello, hello. Hello.
Hey, hey,
Hello.
Jake.
Hello.
But before my learned friend begins, I would like to say that the compilation of judgments has been handed over today only in the courtroom, and we might take some time to go through that judgments, my lords.
The counsel for the appellant seeks permission from the bench to present the matter, sir. Yes. Yes, sir. Yes. So I'll come to that, sir. Before that, I would like to submit the wakalatnama, the power of attorney, the appellate memorandum, and the synopsis to both the sides. Would the honorable member like the counsel for the appellants to briefly take the bench through the factual matrix before the legal issues are formulated? Yes. So the appellant is a developer engaged in the construction and sale of the residential and commercial projects. The present appeal arises out of a joint development agreement entered into with the landowner, under which the landowner was entitled to a monetary consideration of rupees 1 crore and 30% of the constructed area. The project was completed and possession was handed over to the buyers in February 2024. Actual occupation of the premises commenced thereafter. Subsequently, the department initiated the proceedings and raised 4 principal allegations. This is for the period subsequently from February 24 till date of the investigation was carried out. The department initiated on 4 principal allegations: that GST under reverse charge on alleged transfer of development rights under joint development agreement, GST on purchase of TDR including TDR purchased by proprietor for construction of his personal residence, GST on apartments sold after first occupation merely because the completion certificate has not been issued, and invocation of section 74 alleging suppression and intent to evade tax. These allegations culminated in impugned order confirming tax, interest and penalty. With your Honor's permission, I would now formulate the issues arising for the consideration. Your Honor, in modern constitutional governance, tax laws derive legitimacy not merely from the collection of revenue, but from the adherence of legality, certainty and fairness. When the statutory language has provided something, or statutory language is respected, revenue is protected. Where the statutory language is ignored, the foundation of the taxation itself is weakened. So whatever is provided in the statute has to be respected. At the first glance, this appeal appears complex because it involves development rights, TDR, real estate transactions and valuation principles. However, the controversy actually is remarkably simple. The department's entire case rests on 4 assumptions. that the first occupation is irrelevant, that every development agreement is a transferable development right, that development right can be separated from land, and that economic value of a same project can be taxed twice. If these assumptions fail, my lord, the demand itself will fail. I propose to demonstrate that each of these assumptions is contrary to the statute, contrary to the notifications, contrary to the judicial precedents, and contrary to the architecture of GST itself. I shall address the appeal under 6 different heads. All my submissions are grouped under 6 heads. The first being the wrong invocation of section 74. GST is not payable on units sold after first occupation. Development rights are arising benefits arising from land. Demand results in impermissible double taxation. And the joint development agreement does not amount to transfer of TDR. And the last, the personal TDR purchased by the proprietor cannot be taxed in the hands of the proprietary concerned. Now I would like to proceed one by one the issues. Your honors, I begin with the first issue, that is the wrongful invocation of section 74. Before asking whether tax is payable or not, one has to go under which section the demand has been proposed. And again, whether I would like to point out that whether section 74 should be invoked at all. Section 74 is not an ordinary recovery provision. It is a serious allegation carrying civil consequences. The legislature has consequently required, and that if 74 has to be invoked, there has to be some ingredients in that. What is that ingredients? Fraud, willful misstatement, suppression of facts, and intent to evade tax. Every tax dispute is not a fraud dispute, sir. Every interpretation disagreement cannot be elevated into an suppression. So there is nothing more enumerating than the knowledge of truth. And the truth in this case is that there is no suppression before the department. The JDA was disclosed, books were maintained, returns were filed, records were produced, and investigation was fully cooperated. So where is the question of there being any concealment? The department has merely adopted a different legal interpretation of disclosed transactions. This is not suppression. This is what we call litigation, and the law is not settled in this issue again. The Supreme Court in the case of Anand Nishikawa has held that the burden to prove suppression intent lies squarely on the department. Even in Pushpam Pharmaceuticals, the Supreme Court has held that suppression must be willful and with intent to evade and not a mere omission or failure to declare. The Supreme Court, even in the case of Uniworth Textiles, has categorically held that mere non-payment of tax cannot be equated with suppression of facts unless there is a deliberate intent to evade payment of tax. So, Your Honor, what I would like to ask my counsel is that what is the evidence that there was a wrongful intent? There is nothing. What is the event that there is a concealment? There is no evidence. What is the finding that the information was withheld? There is no evidence. There is no evidence presented by the department that there is some kind of a suppression. What is here, there is a difference of interpretation. That is the only case, and this is not the case of section 74. Therefore, if every interpretation issue, for every interpretation issue 74 is invoked, then 74 itself will become what we say, all cases will be covered under section 74. Therefore, 74 itself collapses according to me, and therefore this demand should be set aside under 74. The next argument which I would like to present is that the department says that the tax is payable since once you have only received the OC, after that only tax is not payable. The case of the assessee is that what is perhaps the department's logic is that no completion certificate, then GST applies. Okay. So that is the entire case. But the statute says something different. Para 5B of Schedule 2 of the CGST Act says completion certificate or first occupation, whichever is earlier. There is a word which is mentioned, whichever is earlier. And the legislation has specifically mentioned both the two events. First occupation or completion certificate or occupancy certificate, whichever is earlier. The parliament has specifically mentioned this, and therefore we can't ignore that there is a case of a actual occupation. The respondent interpretation requires the tribunal to ignore the reality. What is the reality here? That the premises were occupied. The possession was given. Electricity connection was given. Water connection was given. We cannot ignore this fact. So therefore the statutory event has already occurred. Once the first occupation occurs, the legal fiction of construction service comes to an end. What remains that there is a completed building. Sale of a completed building and therefore is outside the scope of GST as per Schedule 3 of the CGST Act. I will like to just highlight here, suppose a family moves in, the children live there, electricity is consumed, water is consumed, furniture is there. Can the department say that legally the construction continues but the municipal certificate is pending? That is not possible. That would mean the building is simultaneously occupied and under construction. That is not possible. How can you say that the building is simultaneously occupied also and there is under construction also? You can't have two different arguments. We have to look at the substance of the transaction and not the shadows. The occupation is reality and the certificate is an evidence. Sir, I would also like on a lighter note to say that if a child is born, once a child is born before a birth certificate is issued, we can't say the child is born before the birth certificate. First the child has to be born and then the birth certificate can be issued. A marriage has to be done and then the marriage certificate can be issued. Before occupation, how can the occupation normally, that is the logic we would like to present here. The third argument which I would like to put forward before the bench is that the development rights are benefits arising out of the land. Even assuming for a moment, we are taking a ground which is prejudice, whatever we have argued, each ground is without prejudice to each other, that even if for a moment that the development rights are transferred, the department encounters a more fundamental legal difficulty, that development rights according to me are benefits arising out of the land. And in the various judgments which I would like to quote here, that the benefits arising out of land have been consistently recognized as immovable property. The Bombay High Court in the case of Chheda Housing has held that the development rights constitute benefits arising out of land, and by identifying these rights as a benefit arising out of the land, the court has categorically characterized them as immovable property within the meaning of Section 326 of the General Clauses Act. Even the Supreme Court in Ananda Behere versus State of Orissa has affirmed that the right to take a profit of the soil is a benefit arising out of land, and thus it constitutes an immovable property. The Gujarat High Court in the case of Munjal Manishbhai Bhatt observed that the clear legislative intent was to exclude the supply of land in every form from the GST net. And this has been the practice, that is what they have mentioned from the erstwhile VAT and service tax regime also. So I would like to request, humbly submit that one simple question to be answered here is that can the development right exist without the land? Remove the land and the rights have gone. So therefore the rights derive existence from the land, value from the land, and utility from the land. So no branch can survive without its root. So therefore the development rights do not float independently in the market. It is connected to the land, and therefore it is inseparable from the land, and therefore the demand, this is a sale of land only, and therefore if at all we consider this will be land only, and therefore it is outside the scope of GST. My fourth submission before the bench is that the demand rests on something which is called as double taxation. Your Honors, the GST, this issue goes to the heart of GST. Suppose we say that in 2017 when the GST was introduced, it is a value-added tax, and we remove the cascading effect of tax, all those. Every real estate project consists of land cost, the development right cost, the construction cost, and the financing cost. All these elements are embedded in the final apartment value which we sell to the independent buyers. And GST is payable on that before the receipt of OC or first occupation, whichever is earlier. Now here, the customer pays for everything when he purchases the flat, and GST is paid on that. Now again you are saying that on the development rights, someone has to pay the tax under reverse charge. This is something which is beyond the understanding, and therefore this has been held by the courts. In the case of Vasanta Green, tribunal has held that once the development right stands embedded in the project value on which tax has already been discharged, a second levy becomes unsustainable. Even the Mumbai tribunal in the case of Ethics Infra has referred to this judgment. So here the department has not separately identified any separate value. They are saying that on the same value pay double taxation, that is against, and accordingly, according to me, this amounts to double taxation, and therefore the demand should be squashed. The fifth issue I would like to highlight here is that the department says that the joint development agreement is transfer of development rights. According to me, joint development agreement is not transfer of development rights. department proceeds that everything, whenever you enter into joint development agreement, there is a transfer of development rights. It is just a right to enter the premises. There is no certificate issue. There is no what we call as any document, any ownership being transferred here. So it is just what we say permission to enter the land, and there is a transfer of development rights. These are distinct. Okay. So here I would like to highlight the judgment of the Bombay High Court in the case of Srinivas Realcon, which is a jurisdictional high court also, and they have clearly recognized that distinction, that entry 5B of the notification of the reverse charge notification applies only when there is a transfer of TDR or FSI contemplated under the development regulations. In the present case, there is no TDR, there is no transferable FSI, there is no marketable development rights, and there is no municipal entitlement. This is just the landowner permitting the developer to enter the premises and develop the premises, and therefore this is a conventional area sharing JDA, and this is not a transfer of development rights, and therefore the demand should be squashed on this ground. The sixth ground which I would like to highlight is the personal TDR of the proprietor cannot be taxed in the hands of the firm. Here there was a proprietor had purchased some TDR from the open market for the personal residence, and department seeks to tax in the hands of the proprietary concern. With due respect, I would like to say this finding is astonishing. GST applies only on the transaction which has nexus to the business. If I have nexus to my business, then only. I have not utilized the TDR for the business premises. It is for my personal residence, and therefore there is the TDR is there is no again there is no contradictory evidence which has been given by the department that they have used this for the business purposes, and therefore the demand is not sustainable, and the statutory requirement here is completely absent, and therefore I humbly submit that the demand on this also should be squashed. So Your Honor, individual each ground is sufficient to set aside the order, and cumulatively, according to me, the department's case it is impossible to sustain, and therefore the entire demand along with the interest and penalty should be dropped. Thank you.
Hello. My lords, before I start my submissions, my lords, I would like to first clarify certain facts. My learned friend stated that the project was complete in February 2024. My lords, we all know that the risk of an unfinished building lies in the corporation. If today no OC is granted by the corporation or a competent authority who is supposed to grant a certificate, completion certificate, and this completion certificate is given after so many checks. It's not just the structure which has to be completed, but there has to be fire NOC, there has to be electrical NOC, there has to be a proper sewerage outside the building, there should be proper water lining, water intake inside the building, and there should be various other compound which should be safely guaranteed to be proper for living or a human being. And this is because human being's life has to be protected. Now, my lords, my learned friend started with the first fact that the project was completed in February 2024. Then why was OC not granted in February 2024? Have they even applied for February OC in February 2024? No. In all respects, my lords, therefore, this building was not completed in February 2024. And the point of first occupation, my lords, I'll deal in this subsequent point, my lords. Therefore, as far as factual assertion is concerned, my lords, we deny that the building was completed in February 2024. It was not complete. There is no OC, not even applied for. Now, the second and the most important factual assertion which my learned friend has failed to provide is that this is a mixed use project, that is a project of residential plus commercial. My learned friend has conveniently not referred to that part of the entire facts. So there are different tax implications under GST as far as residential commercial projects are concerned. And my learned friend has failed to even argue that point why his client has not even made any payment of GST as far as commercial project or the commercial part of the project is concerned. No answer to that effect. Therefore, my lords, the entire project is liable for GST on this ground itself. They are not coming with clean hands. Now, my lords, may I take my lords now to the one by one point which my learned friend argued. The first point my learned friend argued is Section 74 should not be invoked at all. And then he referred to the Supreme Court decisions that for invoking Section 74, there has to be evidence and intention to evade payment of tax. My lords, on facts, I will prove that there is complete dishonesty of his client. They have not paid the legible taxes, let alone the interpretational issues. Even where they are accepting the liability, they have not paid it. I'll show it, my lords. And therefore, the evidences are there in the notice in the order itself. I do not have to go beyond that, my lords. There is no further requirement for me to show why 74 has to be invoked. And that evidence is, my lords, I will take it at the end. My lords, may park this for a minute. I'll take this at the end, why these evidences are already provided, my lords. Coming to the next part, my lords, my learned friend argued that only after OC tax is not payable. In other words, after February 2024, when the first occupation was already granted to certain occupants illegally, he says that whatever supplies are made till the date of OC, that also should not be, that should not be taxable under GST because first occupation is complete. Now, my lords, I'll take my lords to that Schedule 2, Para 5A. If my lords come to the Schedule 2, Para 5A, I'll just read out that para. What does the Schedule 2, Para 5B rather, sorry. It says the following shall be treated as supply of services, namely construction of a complex, building, civil structure or a part thereof, including a complex or building intended for sale to a buyer, wholly or partly, except where the entire consideration has been received. My lords may note this, except where the entire consideration has been received after issuance of completion certificate where required by the competent authority, that is one part, or after its first occupation, whichever is earlier. Therefore, my lords, two things I have to see, the department has to see, my lords, that if a single penny of consideration has been received before the completion certificate or first occupation, whichever is earlier, then I am liable to levy GST on the SSC. Now, my lords, the learned friend wanted to argue that the first occupation in this case is complete and therefore that is earlier, therefore completion certificate is non-est. My lords, I started with the correct factual position, my lords. And that has been clarified by the CBIC also in its circular. I have referred to my circular 2019, that FAQ part also. First occupation means occupation granted under the law as per the prevailing norms by the state government, central government or any other law timing in force. Today, my lords, that building in February 2024 is not complete. The first occupation which has been granted is also illegal. In fact, something happens, God forbid, if anything happens to that building or to any of the occupants, the builder is personally liable for that. And therefore, my lords, we have already indicated or rather issued letter to the corporation also that first occupation has been done, which is illegal, and they will take the required action, my lords. As far as, and my lords, not only that, if at all first occupation has been done, my lords, there is a provision for regularizing that first occupation before the OC is issued. If suppose I am constructing a building today, if I am not granted the OC, and it is going to take time, if I am granting anybody to or giving possession to anybody to live in that building, I will be penalized by the corporation and I am liable to pay certain fee for this regularization. They have not shown that whether they have made that payment of fee. Nothing of that sort has been shown, my lords, and therefore the first occupation is not legal or valid in terms of the notification or rather the Schedule 2 5B, and therefore it cannot be considered as first occupation at all. So till the date of OC, this building is not complete. Before the OC, whatever sales they have made of any flat even 1 rupee has been received, then the entire consideration will be liable to GST, my lords. That is my humble submission, my lords. Now coming, my lords, to my learned friend also tried to say something in a lighter way, that child is born and then birth certificate is issued, etc. Something he was saying, my lords. Lords, we are not on birth and death right now. What if? Who will take the responsibility if anything happens to the occupants during the time when OC is not received? The builder is personally liable. Can he say that I have issued OC after that period, therefore I should not be liable? No, he cannot take that plea. And my lords, we have to see what is the taxable event. The taxable event under section 7 is transfer of anything is a supply if it is done for a consideration in the furtherance of course of business. Has the builder given the works contract service or construction service to the flat owners? Yes. Has he received consideration? Yes. Whether that has been done in the course of business? Yes. Then, my lords, it is a supply. Now we only have to see whether it is a supply of goods or supply of services. If we go by Schedule 2, my lords, because we are guided by Schedule 2 in that case, then it will fall under Schedule 2, Entry 5, Clause B. It is a supply of services liable to GST as per that rate, my lords. And therefore, the order, my lords, sustains on that ground and there is no illegality. Now, let's coming to the next point, which my learned friend said, that this transferable development rights or other development rights is a benefit arising out of land. Now, my learned friend is correct. I agree with him for the time being, that yes, anything and everything coming out of the land is a benefit arising out of a land and therefore can be considered as an immovable property. Right? I do not deny to that. I am agree with my learned friend. However, whether under GST, my learned friend can show any single provision where there is an exemption provided for any transaction in immovable property. My learned friend may not mix up the Finance Act 1994 provisions with the GST law. Finance Act 1994, which is the service tax law, commonly known as service tax law, that provided for exemption, or rather the transactions in immovable property was not considered as service for the purpose of Finance Act 1994. Under GST, there is no such exception provided for any immovable property, my lords. Schedule 3 only states sale of land. It does not say benefits arising out of land. Subject to, my lord, schedule completion of the Schedule 3 entry is same as Schedule 2 entry 5B. It is a replica of it. If my lord sees Schedule 3 also, I'll just take out, my lord, Schedule 3. Yes, I'll read out that entry also, my lords. Sale of land and subject to clause B of paragraph 5, Schedule 2, sale of building. Therefore, if it is a supply of service under 5B, then it will not be excluded. Only after OC or first occupation, it will be a completed building which can be excluded, sale of which can be excluded under Schedule 3. It does not provide any blanket exemption for any kind of immovable property, my lords. And for this, I am relying on two judgments, my lords. One, the judgment of our own Bombay High Court in the case of Builders Association of Navi Mumbai, where they had gone before the Honorable High Court and challenged the levy of GST on the leasehold premium, salami or pagdi, whatever you call it. Basically, the land is given on 60 years lease, which under the Maharashtra Stamp Act and various other Transfer Property Act, MRTP Act, is nothing but conveyance of land for the period of 60 years. That is akin to sale of land, is what was being argued before the Honorable Bombay High Court. That, my lords, in respectful submission, the High Court has considered the entire submission and denied it, stating that nothing doing. There is a difference between the sale of land and benefits or arising out of land. Even premium for 60 years is nothing but consideration for lease of the property, and therefore it will be liable to GST. Therefore, my lords, I am already covered by the Honorable High Court to say that this every and any immovable property is not exempt under GST, neither excluded under Schedule 3. They have to prove how it is excluded under Schedule 3, which my learned friend has failed to prove, and therefore the order is valid. My learned friend also relied upon the Nagpur bench of the Bombay High Court decision in the case of Srinivas Railcon. There again, our submission is this. First, that was our limited submission is that it is firstly pending before the Supreme Court, my lords. Secondly, my lords, the facts are distinguishable. There it was a case of an 8,000 square feet plot owned by a person who appointed a contractor because he could not construct it on his own. He had to employ a lot of capital. So what he said is, contractor, you please come, you construct the property on this, give me 2 flats, balance you can sell out. It's a pure works contract, my lords. No interest. Therefore, my lords, in our respectful submission, Srinivas Railcon will not be applicable in the present facts of the case, my lords. This is a joint development agreement separately governed by the Telangana High Court decision, also now pending before the Supreme Court. I'll take my lords to that in another point, my lords. Then, my lords, the next point my learned friend said is about double taxation, my lords. My lords, my learned friend gave a lot of insight on what is the concept of value-added tax, and the tax should be finally borne by the customer and not by the suppliers. I agree. Because I have one question to my learned friend. Did he bear the tax on the TDR which he purchased for his own personal bungalow? No answer, my lords. They want to claim an exemption, whereas they have not paid the tax on the input side. And therefore, my lords, this is a clear evidence that they have intended to evade payment of tax. They knew that the TDR is going to be, either they knew that this TDR is going to be for the personal bungalow, and therefore they should not have claimed exemption from the supplier. I'll take my lords to that notification. Now, my lords, on one hand, they are making this big argument of double taxation. They are not even paying single tax. Another point, my lords, my learned friend referred to the Vasanta Green and Ethics Infra. Both these decisions are under service tax law, where firstly, the Honorable High Court, as well as pending before the Supreme Court now, Honorable High Courts have, and the sister at Mumbai, has gone on the certificate to say that entire consideration of the project has been levied, or rather service tax has been paid on that entire project. No such evidence has been brought in this case, my lords. They provided a CA certificate to say that the entire consideration of that project has been subjected to service tax. Nothing of that sort has been brought in this case, my lords. Therefore, that double taxation argument is completely false and illegal, without any basis. Now, coming to, my lords, the next argument, the joint development agreement. My learned friend said that this is a joint development agreement where there is nothing called as transfer of development rights. And he again relied on the Srinivas Railcon Nagpur bench decision, my lords. But I am relying on the Telangana High Court decision, Prahita Construction Telangana High Court, which is now pending before the Supreme Court. It has been admitted, no stay has been granted. Prahita Construction Telangana High Court. And my submission is this, my lords. There is an agreement. Under this agreement, the landowner has land and the builder has capability to construct a building. And whatever is required for that building, they will employ that. It is man, material, labor, capital, etc. And they will construct on that particular land. And then the proceeds of that are shared. This is a simple joint development agreement. Yes. Correct, sir. Now, my lords, in our case, firstly, this is not a simple joint development agreement, because the consideration does not flow in cash only. It flows in cash plus kind. So we cannot say that this is a simple joint development agreement by which the landowner gets the entire consideration cash and then the builder will come, employ his man, material, labor, construct the building and sell it outside. It is not so. In this case, the builder is going to give 1 crore cash and 30% of the constructed area to the landowner. Now my lords, in this case, when the builder is providing construction service, there is certain consideration received by him in the form of development right. My friend says there is nothing called as development right. I'll agree with him for a minute. But some right is definitely being flowing from the landowner to the builder. That is the valid consideration for which he is providing this construction service. Similarly, for the landowner also, he is getting 1 crore as consideration and something called as construction service for some right which is provided by him. I'll say that right, I need not name it. That nomenclature is irrelevant. But some right is flowing from the landowner to the builder by which he is getting that 1 crore and the 30% constructed area. Now that right, my lords, unless it is land, it is not excluded. It is any right for that matter, whatever my learned friend want to name it. But that right is not sale of land and therefore it will not be excluded from GST. There are two transactions. One is supply of some right by the landowner, which again attracts GST, and some construction service by the builder to the landowner, which also attracts GST. And my lords, there was double taxation. And to avoid this, the GST Council had suggested entire new regime in 2019 by which, to the extent of unsold flat only, there is a RCM liability on that right in the hands of the builder. If the sale is already happened for the entire project before the OC, he is liable to pay on output tax, output side entire tax. Therefore, the entire liability on this right, which is flowing from landowner on RCM, was exempt. But if there is any unsold flat before the receipt of OC, since those flats are going out of the GST regime, then the developer or the builder has to bear the burden of that tax. And the law provides for the developer to do that under RCM liability. Therefore, my lords, as far as GN Development Agreement argument is concerned, that is already covered by the Honorable Telangana High Court decision, and it is pending before the Supreme Court. Supreme Court has not granted stay completely, not granted stay and stated that we are not granting any stay in this matter. So as on date, tax has to be paid on this, my lords. Now coming to, my lords, the next argument of personal TDR cannot be taxed in proprietary concern. My lords, as I told, if we see the notification number 4 of 2019, that notification provides for exemption on TDR. It says, services by way of transfer of entry 41A, I am reading, my lords. It says, services by way of transfer of development rights on or after 1st April 2019 for construction of residential apartments by a promoter in a project intended for sale to a buyer. My lords, I'm sorry, I'll read it once again. Services by way of transfer of development rights on or after 1st April 2019 for construction of a residential apartment. My lords, may kindly note this. For construction of residential apartment by a promoter in a project intended for sale to a buyer, wholly or partly, except where the entire consideration has been received after issuance of completion certificate where required by the competent authority or after its first occupation, whichever is earlier. And then the amount of GST exemption available for construction of residential apartment in the project under this notification shall be calculated as under. And my lords, the formula is given. Now, my learned friend must provide evidence. Firstly, when he bought this TDR for his personal project or personal bungalow, for the time being I'll agree, yes, when I buy gold for myself, I am not into business of buying and selling gold, and therefore I will not be liable for GST. That is what the CBIC has also has clarified in the circular. But did he declare that this is for residential project and therefore the supplier has not taxed him? If he has declared and the supplier has not taxed him for that reason, this is a clear evidence of suppression and 74 is applicable, my lords. And if he has not declared, then the supplier will tax him. Because there is no exemption to supplier otherwise. If I am a trader in TDR, or I'm giving or selling TDR, I'm holding TDR and I'm selling it to any person for his own personal use, not for residential project, then I'm going to charge the GST on the TDR. So my learned friend must show that whether the TDR he bought has suffered tax or not. And if he has given a wrong declaration that is for residential project, my lords, clear evidence for 74 to be invoked, my lords. Also, my lords, with this, my lords, I have clarified the notification entry only provides exemption for residential project. What about the commercial part of the project? That RCM liability should have been paid on day 0. If the entire project is of, let's say, 10,000 square feet, out of which 2,000 square feet is the commercial area, he should have paid the RCM on this TDR on day 0 when this project was finalized or the approval was granted of the 2,000 square feet. No tax has been paid by them. They are aware of this. Therefore, another evidence, my lords, 74 has to be invoked. For them, my lords, it is easy to say that no evidence has been provided. When we provide the evidence, the burden is them to disprove it. An assumption of law is not knowing the law is not an excuse, my lords. They are aware of this law. They, in their, my lords, facts is clear that this is a mixed-use project, residential plus construction, commercial construction. They are aware of it. And my lords, lastly, once this entire thing is taxable, my lords, the order does not provide, and they have not provided any legality in the order. They should be penalized with 100% penalty under section 74, and my lords, the interest is automatic under the law. Thank you, my lords. May I complete the submission?
Honorable member, I would like to counter my learned friend's pointers one by one. The first point which was raised is that the facts of the case. In the facts of the case, it is clearly mentioned that the proceedings are for the in respect of the apartments booked and sold after February 2024. So the proceedings in question are for the apartments booked and sold after February 2024, and this is not for before that. So the question of before whatever has happened is not part of these proceedings. On the second point is that the learned friend mentioned about the first occupation, that if the first occupation has to be lawfully made or not. See, the GST law does not specifically mention this. The GST law specifically mentioned two events. One is the first occupation and completion certificate or occupation certificate. Now, whether that is legal, illegal, that is not under the GST law to be considered. I would like to refer the one of the judgments of the Delhi High Court in the case of JK Industries. It is wherein it was held that the contract of letting does not become void even if no OC has been received. It is possible that the municipality can levy penalty on it, but the contract, mere fact that the certain penalties are to be imposed for occupying the building before OC or whatever the penalty, that the municipality will levy, but that is different from the tax law, sir. And therefore the tax law has to be read in singularity, and therefore as per the tax law, there are two events. One is occupation, completion certificate or occupation certificate, or first occupation. And therefore that is on that point, sir. With regard to the argument on the land, whether development rights is a land akin to a land or not, I have given various arguments on this point, sir. Sir, what cannot be taxed directly as land cannot be taxed directly by merely saying it is a, indirectly by merely saying it is a development right. The learned fed agreed with my proposition that the development rights are akin to land. They are benefits arising out of land. They are akin to land, and therefore, the question of not paying tax on this is because our argument is that development rights, whatever rights they are saying, is they are akin to land. They're part of the sale of land. Also, on the immovable property, which he mentioned. So what is immovable property? It is land and building. Both the land and building are covered in the Schedule 3. Except for that exception that before OC, whatever flats are sold, on that booked and sold, consideration is received. On that, there is an Schedule 2 that entry is given. But sale of land and sale of building are part of Schedule 3. That is immovable property. Land and building are immovable property. And this being an immovable property is not subject to GST. Also, I would like to highlight here in the judgment of the Supreme Court in the case of VCK Footsteps at para 60, there is a mention that stamp duty related transactions or liquor related transactions or immovable property related transactions, the council has specifically said they are outside the purview of the GST, and therefore these development rights, which is akin to whatever immovable property or land, they should be outside the scope of GST itself, and therefore the entire argument of the department fails here. On the point of Prahita Constructions and Srinivas Realcon, the department has attempted to distinguish the Srinivas Realcon, saying that this is JDN. The point here is, it is on the reverse charge notification. Whether that will apply to TDR or any development right. We are saying development rights are, as per it is a sale of land, it is outside the scope of GST. For a moment we say that it is development rights. Here they mention the transferable development rights only. It is not any and every right. Under the JDA, if any right is, it is not covering. So the Srinivas Realcon is on that fact, and they are twisting the facts according to me to say this. With regard to the Prahita Constructions judgment which they have mentioned, sir, first we have to look at the jurisdictional high court, sir. The jurisdictional high court is the Bombay High Court, and Bombay High Court has ruled in favor of the assessee in the case of Srinivas Realcon. And even there are Chheda Housing Bombay High Court judgment which says development rights is benefits arising out of land. It is an immovable property. Therefore, the Prahita Constructions, again, the Prahita Construction goes on the assumption that development rights and land are different. That is the premise of that judgment, and therefore it is pending before the Supreme Court. So therefore this is currently under challenge, and therefore we do not agree to the Prahita Construction judgment, and it is of a different jurisdictional court, sir. With regard to the argument, is regarding with regard to the argument on the double taxation, sir. Sir, what we meant to say here, suppose I take a simple example, sir. I am buying milk. What does milk consist of, sir? Milk consists milk, there is sugar, or suppose I am buying tea. So I am taking an example of a tea. So I will buy milk, I will buy sugar, that sugar is there in that, tea leaves are there. So on that I will pay GST. Again you say on milk, under reverse charge you pay. Doesn't it amount to double taxation, sir? That is the whole argument which we want to put out. And that is the Vasanta Greens and the Ethics Infra judgment. Again, Ethics Infra is the Bombay Tribunal, which is the binding judgment on this jurisdiction. Sir, with regard to the point on the personal TDR, which was purchased by Shri Akhandanand Tripathi, the proprietor, we would like to state that, sir, this we have clearly stated when it was purchased, it is not for Amba Enclave project. It is not for Amba Enclave project. And the question whether tax has to be paid by the supplier or tax has to be paid by the recipient, that is, if the supplier has to pay, supplier is liable. Don't catch us. Why are you catching us? We have not utilized this TDR for Amba Enclave. That is the fact. We have not utilized this and department does not have any evidence that they say that this TDR has been utilized for Amba Enclave project. So therefore, what I would like to submit here is that there is a what we say my learned friend, the evidence what they are trying to push on us, they have to prove. If the supplier has not paid, then catch the supplier. Why are you coming against? We have not utilized this thing for the Amba Enclave, and therefore this is not for business purpose, sir, and therefore we are not liable under reverse charge. To conclude, I would just like to say that I agree that the revenue is entitled to every rupee of tax which is due under law. But it is not entitled to for any rupee beyond the law. Whatever is lawful, we will pay. Whatever the department is trying to get out of from by what forcefully, that is not liable to be paid. And so therefore, the humble submission is that the GST law empowers the taxation of genuine transactions. Whatever genuine transactions, we are compliant taxpayers and we will pay that. But we can, if you ignore the first occupation, if you ignore the fact that the development rights is not akin to land, there is a double taxation in case of joint development agreements. Then even the section 74, they said we have suppressed it. We have disclosed everything. All the government records are available. All the agreements are registered with the government. How can there be suppression, sir? So therefore, the section 74 invocation is not valid, and this entire demand has to be squashed, sir. And that is our request. Our prayer is that, sir, please allow the appeal in its entirety. Set aside the impugned order. The demands related to tax, interest and penalty be squashed, and you may grant any consequential relief as you deem fit, sir. And much obliged, Your Honors.
This tribunal has carefully considered the submission of both the sides, the statutory provisions under the GST Act, the applicable notifications, circulars and judicial precedents. The following issues are before the consideration of the tribunal. One, whether GST under RCM is payable on development rights transferred under JDA. Second is whether GST under RCM is payable on TDR purchased for the project. Whether GST under RCM is payable on TDR purchased by proprietor for its personal use. Whether GST is payable on apartments booked, sold after February 2024 in absence of CC or OC. Whether invocation of section 74 is legally sustainable, and whether interest under section 50 and penalty under section 74 are maintainable. This tribunal would like to first make everyone understand the scheme of the act so far as that real estate taxation is concerned, particularly after April 2019. It's a kind of barter, and barter is included in GST, which was not in the existing act like white. There is a transfer of development rights. It has some value. There is an event of taxation. It covers under section 9, exemption thereafter. And against that construction, there is a construction service provided by the developer. When there is a JDA, that is an understanding, and the barter plays the role. So, in lieu of development right, there is a construction service provided. Both have a value. The effect is net out, and wherever there is a taxation available, there has to be a tax. So far as the point of cutoff date, we can say, a cutoff date is provided in the notification. That is, either it is completion certificate or the first occupation. Naturally, needless to say, whichever comes earlier, it is an implied thing. So when there is a cutoff date, the cutoff date is prescribed for taxation on the construction services till then. After that cutoff date, the taxation stops, Schedule 3 comes into play, and the TDR on RCM basis, reverse charge mechanism tax on the development right or TDR to the extent of unsold inventory, there is a taxation. Now what is the cutoff date? I think the issue basically centralizes on the issue, this particular issue first. Because there are two options given. One is first occupation or a completion certificate. If you see the rules and regulation of the regulating authority like corporations, MADA, SIDCO, and so many things, even RERA, it says that there has to be a completion certificate first. As you all know, the procedure to be made in brief. There is a plan put up for sanction before the corporation. They create some IODs, some queries that is to be resolved. Then the calculation is made, premium is paid, and the CC, commencement certificate, is issued. That is, that CC is for the purpose of commencement of the construction, permission to construct. Then construction gets completed as per the rules regulation. Then this completion certificates, CC is issued. For that matter, there are certain points. An occupation certificate is something different. Certifies that the physical construction of the building is completed. Then for completion certificate, confirms that building was built according to the approved structural plans. Then timing is that CC means completion certificate is issued first, immediately after the builder finishes the completing building structure. And legal implication is allow legal sale and transfer of property land. Whereas in occupancy certificates, it certifies that the building is safe and fit for people to live in, as pointed out by the learned counsel from the appellant side. Then confirms essential utilities, water, electricity, sewage, fire safety are connected and functional. Second, only after the CC is obtained, the utility inspections are passed, and then allows buyers to legally occupy and reside. So if you go by the law, and as rightly pointed out in FAQs and circular, that first there has to be completion certificate, then there has to be OC, and then there could be occupation. It cannot be understood why in the notification the option is given as completion certificate or first occupation. In fact, there can't be first occupation or completion certificate. If one goes by the law, it has to be completion certificate, then OC, and then first occupation. So if one goes strictly by the law, that part of first occupation can be said as etious or redundant for the purpose. So what is the cutoff date should be considered as completion certificate. So and now we see the scheme of the act. Before completion certificate, you can sell the value of the apartment sold. And after the completion certificate issued, to the extent of unsold inventory, there is RCM on the development rights, transfer of development rights, both way. So you can't have a cake and eat it too. You can't say that development right would be taxable as well as the sale of apartment would be taxable. If there is a cutoff date not as first occupation but the completion certificate, then till then the apartment can be taxed. But then till then development right can't be taxed and, as a RCM. So in my opinion, the taxation is very clear. The learned counsel for the appellant, though, has quoted certain judgments, but the position of the law is very clear. So far as invocation of section 74 is concerned, it it is very clear that in the notification itself, the first occupation is one of the option given, and that has been adopted by the appellant. So in all in all put together, it is basically a matter of interpretation more rather than suppression or the evasion or concealment part. So in my opinion, though the levy of tax on sale of apartment and after the completion certificate, the RCM levy on the development rights sustain, the invocation of 74 appears to be not proper. So in view of that, invoking the provision of section 75(1) and 75(2), and in the recent judgment, the principal bench of the GSTAT has said it has to be remanded for the purpose of 73. Also, the remand is required for the purpose of inquiring into the issue of development right or TDR purchased for personal use. It has only stated and argued. It is to be looked into whether it was purchased in the personal name, it was really used in his personal bungalow. That requires certain verification part, and for both these matters, the matter has to be remanded to the adjudicating authority for determination. I think all the points are covered. 74. As I'm remanding the matter for not invoking 74 and invoking 73, the penalty would be decided accordingly. Interest would be automatic. So the adjudicating authority should consider not as first occupation as a cut-off date, but as a completion certificate as a cut-off date. Accordingly, the matter is remanded to the adjudicating authority. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judge Sahab. And with that judgment, the session concludes. We have a pleasant duty to present memento to our honorable judge today. I request CA Siddharth Purva to kindly come forward and present CA Govind Kalandri. Memento and gift. Govind, gift please. जोरदार तालियों से स्वागत करें माननीय एडवोकेट धनंजय अखाड़े साहब को आज के कार्यक्रम का स्मृति चिन्ह और एक गिफ्ट हम यहाँ पे प्रदान कर रहे हैं. थैंक यू सो मच. मैं आमंत्रित करता हूँ सीए नितिन मुंदड़ा को वे कृपया सामने आए और आज के कार्यक्रम के स्मृति चिन्ह के रूप में एडवोकेट राहुल ठक्कर साहब को एक मेमेंटो प्रदान करें. सीए अमित टावरी फ्रॉम वर्धा, प्लीज कम फॉरवर्ड एंड प्रेजेंट अ गिफ्ट. Thank you. CA Junisha to please come forward. Ritesh Panpalia, CA Ritesh Panpalia. I am sorry, मैंने नाम गलत लिया. CA Ritesh Panpalia from Nagpur. CA Junisha to present a memento to CA Raj Khona. And CA Sandeep, Advocate Sandeep Agrawal to present gift to CA Raj Khona sir. ये सेशन के लिए एक बार जोरदार तालियां. जितना जो प्रिपरेशन दोनों भी रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स ने किया और जितना एग्रेसिवली इन्होंने यहाँ पेश किया, बहुत बहुत मतलब बस ऐसा लग रहा था कि अब बहुत तीसरा महायुद्ध शुरू होने वाला है, लेकिन हमारे जज साहब ने जो है उसको बैलेंस करके संभाल लिया। और अब हम कंक्लूडिंग की तरफ बढ़ते हैं। कुछ चेयर्स अगर स्टेज पे आ जाएं, कुछ चेयर्स अगर लगा सकते हैं स्टेज के ऊपर प्लीज़। तो मैं टीबीए अमरावती के अध्यक्ष दामोदर जी खंडेलवाल को सामने बुला रहा हूँ, और जीएसटीपीएम के प्रेसिडेंट एडवोकेट पार्थ बडेका को मैं सामने बुला रहा हूँ। आज के हमारे चीफ गेस्ट श्री खून साहब को रिक्वेस्ट है कि कृपया स्टेज पे। थैंक्स फॉर रिमाइंडिंग। पार्थ बडेका साहब का रिक्वेस्ट है कि हम ऑर्गेनाइजिंग टीम और ऑफिस बीरर्स पास प्रेसिडेंट्स के साथ एक ग्रुप फोटो लेंगे जो जीएसटी रिव्यू में दिया जाएगा। तो मैं सभी जितने उपस्थित है हॉल में, सारे पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं, उनको भी रिक्वेस्ट करता हूं कि उस ग्रुप फोटोग्राफ में आपके सभी के प्रेजेंस यहाँ पे मार्क होना चाहिए। सो जस्ट बी विथ अस फॉर 5 मिनट्स। आखाड़े से या ना समोर या ना, आशित भाई प्लीज आइए। अपना राज खोना साहब, नहीं मैं इसलिए बुला रहा हूँ कि टाइम टेबल में वो कंक्लूडिंग के पहले है ना क्वेश्चन आंसर सेशन है। इफ एनीबडी हैज अ क्वेश्चन, तो राहुल जी आइए आइए प्लीज आइए। फ्यू मोर चेयर्स प्लीज। हाँ हाँ लगा दी, बैठिए बैठिए प्लीज। इफ यू हैव एनी क्वेश्चंस, आदित्य खंडेलवाल जी कृपया आइए प्लीज। जोशी जी या 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 नाही नाही समोर बसा ना, चांगलं नाहीतरी आपल्याला यायचंच आहे फोटोमध्ये, सगळे इकडे असले म्हणजे ब्रेन ट्रस्ट। इफ देर इज एनी क्वेश्चन, सुनील भैया हाथ ऊंचा किए। और जब तक आप अपने क्वेश्चन वहाँ पे तैयार कर रहे हैं, तब तक मैं पुकार रहा हूँ सीए दिनेश राजदेव को वोट ऑफ थैंक्स के लिए, और बुला रहा हूँ श्रेणिक सीए श्रेणिक बोथरा को कि कृपया सेक्रेटरी की चेयर यहाँ पे ऑक्यूपाई करें।
I, on behalf of all the three organizations, I express my sincere gratitude to all the chief guests, all the learned speakers, GSTPM presidents, VTPA and Jagdish Sharma ji, and all past presidents, chairmen and members of all the associations. I also like to thank you, Ashok Chandak ji and Dhananjay Akhade ji, judges of the mock tribunals. I also like to thank all the dignitaries and members from various locations like Akola, Varda, Yotmal, etc. I also like to thank CA Lalit Tamiji, who has prepared the seminar souvenir. I also like to thank C. Aditya Khandelwal, जिन्होंने speakers का coordination किया. I also like to thank all the staff of R.R. Khandelwal and sir. Also like to thank hotel artist staff and special thanks to Rajesh Chandak sir, the program coordinator, और all in one रहते हैं हर बार. And also the media persons from the Pratidin and Mandal and all the delegates. And special thanks to seminar conveyors and all who were directly and indirectly involved in making the seminar successful. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dinesh. May I request all the 4 conveners to kindly join the stage, and request all the past chairmen of TBA and ICI to please come forward here and join for the group photograph, and request all the present members over to come over here. सबको बुला लिया ना? Everybody in the hall. All the members of Tax Bar Association Amravati are requested to occupy front chairs